excited we are about your show coming to Melbourne. It's called Killing Rove for all of the listeners out there, and I was wondering if you could start off by telling us a little bit about what people can expect to see from this show.
Well, basically, Killing Rove, despite its name, is somewhat of a loving tribute to the man himself, while simultaneously being a simulation of a manic episode. I have bipolar, and I'm on the autism spectrum, and I was trying to capture what neurodivergent and manic and autistic thought actually feels like, and kind of simulate it for neurotypical people, and try to replicate it in this very screwball, very dark satire of Australia in the Howard years.
Yep.
So it's basically that, and there's jokes about neighbors launching a line of amphetamine fueled nootropics, and the show is sponsored by Boko Haram. So there's a lot of stuff in there. Yeah.
How difficult was it to replicate that for an audience, to show an audience what that is like for people to experience?
I think I've been doing it in my writing and my comedy especially for a very long time. And in the last 2 years, I've kind of synthesized it down to a bit of a fine art by using a screen. And so this show is very multimedia driven. There's a barrage of video and images and music and sound. And for example, I have a floating deepfake Peter Hellier head that co-hosts the show with me, and he's constantly animated, and he has 10 pre-recorded catchphrases that he says at certain points. So there's this constant sense of action and distraction and digression and obsessiveness and little details. So that's about as close as I think I could get to people to replicate what it's like inside my head and similar heads.
Definitely. With so much going on with the show, with a lot of comedians to come to Melbourne, they've just literally got to get on a plane and fly here. Do you have to bring much with you to be able to put this show on the stage here in Melbourne?
Well, I've got to bring my laptop, but most importantly, I've got to bring my friend Ben, who operates the Q Lab and the Peter Hellier, more importantly. And other than that, it's just us and a bowl of Skittles. But without him, I'm a bit of a moron with the old laptop. It all falls apart. And it has made booking flights and accommodation a bit nightmarish. Say that much.
So how long would it take for you to put together a show like this, from having the original idea for the show right through to actually being able to perform it?
So I think I originally had the idea when I was living in New York in 2018. I had this idea for a kind of radio play called Rove Lives, where Rove McManus was a kind of wanted extremist or terrorist living on a barge called the McManus Island out in the ocean, and kind of redoing his old talk show under what were essentially hostage negotiation circumstances.
Yep.
And by the time I got to this show, it was 6 months of me devouring Rove footage and reading everything about Rove and just consuming all the most cooked Australian media from that kind of mid-2000s era, which I think if you want to window into this country's dark and truly peculiar soul, 2004 is the year to go for, man. And then because I'm also a chronic procrastinator and have all the mental illnesses listed above, I do everything in the last minute. So I kind of crammed the entire writing and the animating and all the little details of the show into 2 weeks of sleepless nights. When we did the first performance at Perth Fringe this year, we had not done a complete run of the show without any tech errors or anything. And luckily, the audience thought it was all intentional and loved it. So...
Is that something that you're able to do? If something does go wrong, are you able to incorporate it into the show? Because, of course, with Rove's show, things went wrong occasionally because it was live TV. So is that something that you're able to play up as well?
Yeah, I'm luckily very quick on my feet. I'd say quicker on my feet than I am when I've got everything going for me. So the first night, the Peter Hellier head cocked it half the way through. The Q Lab crashed a couple of times. But because of the kind of energy I have, I say my character, but I think that I also have in life, is this almost desperate used car salesman whose life is falling apart in front of you in real time. When things go wrong, it just works so fluidly with the tone of the piece. I'm what I am and what this guy is. That on like, that night we had like 4.5-star reviews, and to me, I got off stage and I was like, everything went wrong there. I had to do like 10 minutes of improvising, and yeah, people loved it. They didn't realize it's just me that is having a terrible time.
Yeah. And I should have asked this earlier on, but why Rove? I know a few years ago John Safran put a fatwa on Rove, and that was because of Rove breaking out of Channel 31, where we were all working at the time. But why Rove for you?
Man, it's a good question, and there's a lot of reasons. I think when I was a 9-year-old boy, I was obsessed with comedy from a young age, and Rove was the only person doing like the American late night TV format in Australia for almost a decade.
Yep.
And he was massive. I think people forget, like a lot of younger people that come to the show enjoy it, but they say to me afterwards, I don't really know who Rove is. I think for a generation, they don't aren't aware how huge he was.
Yeah.
And because a lot of the show was about the kind of cultural schizophrenia that came post 9/11 and during the Howard years and the Bush years, and just the strangeness of that time of reality TV and all the ephemera around it. I was watching Rove when 9/11 happened. Like, people don't realize that 9/11 happened during a live taping of Rove. He had to explain it to the audience in real time. It cut to Sandra Sully for viewers at home, but he was on stage performing when it happened. And so for me, he's tied up in the schizophrenia of the 21st century, as well as Australia's cultural stagnation, and I love that combo for comedy. I find it very funny.
Yeah. And after the demise of Hey Hey It's Saturday, he was also, at one point, the only television show on Australian television that had live bands coming through. So when big-name artists came to Australia, his was the show that they went to.
And it's crazy that hole in the market is essentially still there when you think about it.
Yeah.
It's very peculiar to have a country like ours that doesn't really have a traditional late-night talk show anymore. And you could say it went with him, and I hesitate to say Andrew Denton, but like that, the Letterman, Johnny Carson style format of, 2 sketches, 2 guests, and a band, kind of went with Rove Live, which I think in itself is really fascinating. And he's such a good, I watched as many old episodes of Rove Live as I could, and it's such a good window into that era in pop culture. The celebrities you have on, what is considered offensive at the time. Like, you're watching things that would not fly now at all.
Yeah.
And stars that you've totally forgotten existed,
Now,
Vlogs about the crazy vlog.
Now, I have to ask, has Rove ever reached out to you, or have you ever met him?
Oh, God, I've been trying so hard. Because he's from West Australia originally. He's from Elmira, where my grandma family grew up. So I've been trying to get him to come to this show. So, because he was at Perth Fringe at the same time as me, and he lives here, and he pops up at our comedy mics here sometimes. But of course, sending somebody an invite that says "Killing Your Name," and I'm aware that I accidentally have a bit of a Travis Bickle, Mark David Chapman energy. Like, I don't want to have it, but it just kind of rests on my face. And so I'm desperately trying to get him to come, because there's nothing in the show that's actually mean or untoward about him.
Yeah.
But no, he hasn't. I met him once when I was a very little boy at the wrestling, actually, where he was refereeing, and that was very exciting for me. And then once my season finished in Perth, my partner bought me tickets to his live show, and it was a week after his performance, and making the show had taken an extreme toll on my physical and mental health. And I was sitting in the middle of this crowd, just dead center, looking at him, having the worst out-of-body experience of my life. I felt like turning to the woman next to me and be like, "You need to take me to the hospital now."
Yeah.
Just, after consuming just thousands of hours of Rove footage, I was like, I've seen things people can't imagine.
Yeah. I know here in Melbourne as well, Peter Hellier reviews a lot of comedy festival shows for radio and TV. What would you do one night if you're on stage and you look down and Peter Hellier was in the audience?
It's just my dream, because, so I'll tell you what happened, right? With the writing of the show, I think originally there was a bit of a darker and cynical intent with the ending, and I was having a lot of trouble finding the ending with about 4 days out to showtime. And I created this animated Peter Hellier head and voiced it and everything. And over the course of rehearsals, both my tech and I we don't know how to explain it. Like, we kind of fell in love with the Pete head. The way we portray him, he's like a big puppy dog. He's like a huge sweetheart. And everybody that sees the show is like, oh, I love Pete. Like, is Pete a hellier like that? I'm like, I mean, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he's not a giant floating puppy dog head man. And he's kind of the soul of the show. And the show ends up having a very, spoiler, wholesome and happy ending. And it's in no large part because I wanted this floating Peter Hellier head to be happy. And I was like, what's what will make this guy happy? And for him to be there, I think I'd almost love it more than Rove being there, I think. Of course, I pretend not to recognize him, but other than that.
Now, for all of our listeners out there, Killing Rove is on as part of the Comedy Festival this year. It's on from April the 11th to the 17th, 7 p.m. every night at the Motley Bauhaus in Carlton. The Motley Bauhaus Theatre in Carlton. Tickets are $20 to $25 as well, so you can grab all of those tickets at comedyfestival.com.au, and we'll put links up there for people as well. Patrick, before I go, what would you like to say to everybody out there who are thinking about heading along to check out Killing Rove?
Come along, have a great time, bring your friends. If you can, bring Rove, and in the words of the immortal man himself, say hi to your mum for me.
Definitely. And for everybody out there again, Killing Rove is on from April the 11th to the 17th, 7 p.m. every night at the Motley Bauhaus Theatre in Carlton. Tickets are $20 to $25, and tickets are available now from comedyfestival.com.au. Patrick, thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today. It's been an absolute honour having you on the show, and I cannot wait to head along and check out Killing Rove.
Thanks so much.